theme. The search for meaning. This is Mr. Washington. Thank you for joining me in today's exploration of theme in literature. Theme is one of the major elements of fiction, and it is one of the most difficult to find. It's just out of reach, like the stars in the sky. So the purpose of today's notes is to help you understand the concept of theme in literature and to help you learn how to find the theme of something you read. So strap yourself in and get ready as we explore the great beyond of theme in literature. The first thing you'll need is a set of Cornell notes, like this one. We'll be using green Cornell notes in class, but any old type of Cornell notes will do. Start by filling in the requisite information in the upper right-hand corner, your name, date, period, and so forth. Once you do that, you can fill in the topic, which in this case is, of course, theme. Now to get us started, I'm going to begin by sharing with you today's objective. This is something you don't need to write down, and since there's really no good place for it, all I ask is that you listen. There are two objectives, and they are as follows. Number one, we want to be able to recognize the elements of narrative structure, including theme. Of course, there are other elements of fiction, but this is the one we're focusing on today. Our second objective is that we want to be able to determine a theme and analyze its development over the course of a text. This means that we want to be able to not only identify what the theme is in a piece of text, but we also want to be able to prove what the theme is using information from the text we are reading. Now, this next piece of information in our exploration is today's essential question. This is something you will need to write. Remember that blue icon at the top tells you that there is something to add to your notes. There are two essential questions, and there is a place for you to write down each of these right at the top of your notes. The first essential question is, how do you identify the theme of a story? The second, how can you use evidence from a story to prove what the theme is? Once we have these questions written, then we can begin our journey into the great beyond of theme in literature. Let's begin by defining theme. Our definition of theme is a life lesson, meaning moral or message about life or human nature that is communicated by a literary work. Go ahead and write that down in your notes. Now, that definition is a bit wordy, so let's narrow it down a bit. We can say, in other words, that theme is what the story teaches the reader. When an author begins writing a piece of text, he or she has certain ideas in mind that they want to convey. Their hope is that you, as their reader, will pick up on those ideas and learn a lesson that can be applied to your own life. And that lesson is the theme. So now that we've defined theme, let's take a look at some examples. To begin with, a theme is not going to be expressed in a single word. A proper theme would be expressed in a sentence, complete with capital letter at the front and punctuation mark at the back. If your theme is a single word, then it probably is not a theme, but rather a subject. Subjects are things like love, prejudice, hope, good, evil, etc. And a subject can help you arrive at a theme, but it's not a theme itself. A theme is a complete sentence that expresses a complete thought, usually a writer's opinion on how readers should live their lives. Because the theme is the author's opinion, you may or may not agree with it, but you don't have to agree with a theme to be able to identify it. Let's take a look at some examples. One example of a theme that you might encounter in a work of literature is money can't buy happiness. Another might be don't judge people based on the surface. And still another might be it's better to die free than to live under tyranny. Notice how none of these themes is specific to any one work of literature. We don't discuss the characters from an exact story or the setting within that story. These themes apply to the entire world and everyone in it, regardless of whether they are in the story or have read the story. So let's give it a try. Let's read a story together and see if we can identify the theme of this brief work of literature. You don't have to write anything down, this is just practice. Read the story along with me and see if you can figure out what is the theme. Jenny Poucherier was so excited. She had a pack of Starburst in her lunch, and she had been looking forward to eating them all morning. Lunch finally came, and Jenny sat down to eat her Starburst when her friend, Yudi, sat next to her. "Let me get the pink ones," asked Yudi. Jenny liked the pink ones best, but she thought Yudi was funny. And Jenny wanted Yudi to like her, so Jenny gave Yudi all of her pink Starbursts. Before Jenny was done giving Yudi all the pink ones, Carrie sat on the other side of Jenny. "Let me get the red and the orange ones, Jenny. Remember when I gave you that Snickers?" Jenny didn't remember that, though she did remember when Carrie ate a whole Snickers in front of her. But Jenny thought Carrie was cool, so she gave her the red ones and the orange Starbursts. Now that she only had yellow ones, Jenny wasn't so excited about eating Starbursts anymore. Okay, let's see if we can find a lesson that can be learned from this story. Well, Jenny is trying to make people around her be friends by giving away things she really wants. In the end, Jenny is unhappy because she gives up the thing she most desires, and it seems that she still hasn't come any closer to having friends. It almost seems like these friends are using her to get what they want and taking advantage of her in the process. So it seems like the lesson that can be learned here is that you shouldn't let people use you. Notice the theme doesn't mention Jenny, Yudi, or Carrie. Any discussion of those characters would be far too specific. A theme should be able to apply to every human being, regardless of whether they are characters in the story. So how do you identify a theme? Well, there are a few things to keep in mind if you are being asked to identify a theme in something you just read. First, themes are not explicit. This means that they are not clearly stated. You're not going to come to a part of the story where it says the theme of the story is blah or here is the theme. Themes are implied, meaning that the writer gives you hints that you must use to figure out the theme. Therefore, themes must be inferred, meaning that you have to make an educated guess about something not explicitly stated in the text. This inference should be based on specific details from the text, which will serve as your evidence for making your inference. The other thing to keep in mind is that themes are bigger than the story. The story is its own small world, and the theme does apply to that small world, but it also applies to the world at large. The big world of a theme applies to the whole world and everyone in it, including the characters in the story. Don't make the mistake of writing a theme that only applies to the characters in your story. A theme should apply to everyone in the entire world, and there should be no mention of characters from the story you read. Themes are about the big picture. If we think back to our story about Jenny and her Starbursts, there are certain things we want to stay away from when stating the theme. We don't want to say something like, yellow Starbursts taste bad. And that might be true, or it may be something that Jenny might agree with, but it's too specific to be a theme. It also wouldn't be something like, Yudi and Carrie are bad friends. That may also be true, and it may be something that Jenny would agree with, but that lesson is one that can only apply to someone who knows Carrie and Yudi, not the whole world. When you try to find a theme, you have to think bigger. Find real-world advice that anyone can benefit from. Something like, don't let people use you. This is an appropriate theme, because it teaches a lesson, and it's a lesson that can apply to anyone, anywhere in the world. Let's review, shall we? There are 3 important things that you want to take away from this lesson. First, theme is something we can learn from a story, a lesson about life that applies to all human beings. Second, themes must be inferred. They are not directly stated, so you have to do some figuring out after you read the story. And finally, themes are about the big world. Themes should not be super specific, but should apply to everyone, everywhere. Now it's time to practice. I'm going to give you 3 stories, and I want you to come up with a theme for each. First, we'll read the story. Then I want you to pause and consider what you think the theme is. Then I want you to write another sentence explaining what happens in the story that leads you to believe that is the theme. In other words, can you give textual evidence to support your theme and show how the small world of the story connects to the big world of the theme? Are you ready to show what you know? Let's give it a try. Here's how this will work. I'm going to read story number 1, and I want you to read along with me. Then I want you to pause the video as you come up with a theme of your own and some evidence from the text to support your theme. Afterwards, I'll share with you an example of one possible theme from the story. Remember, a story can have many themes, and there can be multiple ways of expressing the same theme. So don't worry if your theme isn't stated exactly the same as mine. All right? Story number 1. Once, there was a mean little boy who lived in a small village. This mean little boy loved to mess with people. So one day he ran up to a sheep herder and shouted, "Wolf! Wolf! A wolf is attacking the town!" The sheep herder grabbed his staff and ran to defend the town, but realized he had been fooled when the boy started pointing and laughing at him. "Ha ha, I made you jump," said the boy. Then the boy ran up to a farmer and shouted, "Wolf! Wolf! A wolf is attacking the town!" The farmer grabbed his pitchfork and ran to defend the town. But when he realized the boy started pointing and laughing at him, he realized he had been tricked. As the boy went back to his family farm, laughing about the funny trick he played, he saw a real wolf in his father's chicken coop. As the wolf ate all of the father's chickens, the boy screamed over and over again, "Wolf! Wolf! Please help us!" But nobody came to help him. Now for story number 1, I want you to write down first what you think the theme is, followed by what happens in the story that leads you to believe this. Hit pause while you come up with your answers, then hit pause again to hear my answers. So what did you come up with? Well, here's my answer. You may have heard of the story of the boy who cried wolf before. A good example of a theme from this story might be lying is wrong, or doing bad things will come back to you in the end. Our evidence from the text would sound something like, the little boy in the story lies and it comes back to haunt him because when he needs someone, no one is there. In this example, the theme is about the whole world, while our evidence is only about the world of the story. Remember, even if your example isn't the same as mine, it can still be an appropriate theme. Now let's take a look at another one. Story number 2. Angie loved to draw. She made colorful designs of people's names with bright hearts and flowers, but she lost all of her own markers, so she borrowed her teacher's. The school day was ending, but Angie wanted to keep coloring, so she took the teacher's markers home and lost them in her messy room. She came back to school the next day and wanted to color again, so she asked the teacher for more markers. The teacher replied, "Sure, Angie, but this is my last pack." Angie said she would be careful, but by the end of the day, the markers were scattered all over the floor and the custodian swept them up and disposed of them. When Angie came in the next day, she asked the teacher for more markers, but she was disappointed to find that there weren't any more. "I don't know where all of my markers went," said the teacher, "but I don't have them." Angie had to draw her pictures with drab pencils. Okay, your turn. Pause the video while you come up with a theme of your own and a sentence that explains why. Alrighty, so what did Mr. Washington do with this one? Well, this story is all about Angie and how she loved to draw. The problem is that Angie is careless and messy, which causes her to lose things. In the end, her life is made worse by the fact that her carelessness and messiness has taken away the thing she wants most, which is to color with beautiful markers. So I might say that the lesson here is don't be messy or be responsible when borrowing other people's things. My evidence is that Angie was careless and kept losing markers. She loses her own markers plus 2 of her teacher sets, and she wouldn't be stuck with dull markers if she had only learned to keep up with her things. Now, let's try one more example. Here's our last story. Story number 3. Jenny hated reading class. She didn't understand point of view or figurative language, and not knowing how to do the work frustrated her. She asked the teacher for help, but he spoke so fast and used such big words that she couldn't understand. The teacher asked if she understood, and she nodded her head, but she didn't. Jenny's friend Katie knew that Jenny was having trouble, and rather than just giving Jenny all of the answers, Katie explained to Jenny how to solve the problems. Katie spoke clearly and at Jenny's level, and Jenny was happy that she finally learned how to do the work. Later in the week, Katie was having trouble in math class. She didn't understand coordinates and was really frustrated. Seeing that Katie was having problems, Jenny, who understood math very well, taught Katie coordinates. Both girls made the honor roll that quarter. So, what do you think is the theme of that story? Pause for a moment while you come up with your answer. Okay, I'll take a crack at this one. This one is a story about Jenny. Hey, wait, wasn't one of the other stories we read about a girl named Jenny? I wonder if this is the same Jenny. No, anyway, the story is all about how Jenny's life is made better by the help of someone else. And in turn, when given the chance, Jenny returns the kindness of Katie, who helped her out in the first place. So my theme is going to be help others and they will help you also. Or do unto others as you wish them to do unto you. My evidence, of course, is that Jenny returns a good deed that is done to her by her friend Katie. Bada bing, bada boom. It's as simple as that. Okay, we've come to the end of our notes, but there's one more thing we need to do first. There's a spot at the end of your notes for a summary. Summaries are valuable because they allow you to look back at all the important information one last time before ending your notes. In this case, I want you to summarize these notes by doing the following. In the summary section, write down in your own words what is a theme, and then what is not a theme. In other words, what should a theme not look like when you write it? You may have to look back at your notes to answer these 2 questions, which is kind of the point of the summary. Once you've done that, you have finished your notes. And so concludes another English lesson video. Be sure to clip these notes into your binder and then update your binder table of contents. As with all notes, there will be a test eventually on this material, so be sure to keep up with it. This is Mr. Washington reminding you to always search for a theme in a work